A warm welcome to all on this wonderfully warm day. Now, before taking a short summer break, Novatore's lipstick lunch series is ending on a high note, from Catch 22 to Catch Me If You Can. My partner, Gabriele, and I initiated lipstick lunches as an advocacy tool to enlighten ourselves and decision makers on issues that are relevant to women's economic empowerment. Since March 8th, all speakers in one way or another have flirted with today's topic, Catch 22. Coined by Joseph Heller in one of the great 20th century novels of the same name, the term is defined as a frustrating situation in which one is trapped by contradictory regulations or conditions, any illogical or paradoxical problem or situation, to wit, a dilemma. But before we get to Catch 22, let me address the essentials. Lipstick Lunch organizer Novatore is an organization dedicated to women's economic empowerment and leadership by connecting, supporting, and driving the like-minded. For more details, I encourage you to dive into our website at www.novatore.eu. For those tuning in for the first time, please be aware that the session will be no longer than half an hour. Our speaker will present the topic for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then you have the opportunity to comment or question either in the Q&A function here on Zoom or on our Facebook page connected to this session. A recording of this lipstick lunch will be open to everyone on our Facebook page, novatore.eu, for you to listen to again or share. And previous lipstick lunches can be accessed on YouTube. Now, without further ado, let me introduce today's speaker, Gabi Zedlmayer. Gabi is a social innovator who has been working with numerous global organizations on solving social and environmental issues in collaboration with NGOs, governments, customers, and partners. She explores how technology is changing, how we live and work, and advises companies on implementing critical strategic changes to successfully compete in the digital world. Zedlmayer is an accomplished public speaker on the subjects of sustainable management, social innovation, and foremost, the future of work. Currently, she's advisor to the University of People in California, Georgia State University, and a member of the Hochschulrat at the University of Bayreuth. She also serves on the board of Ms. AI at NEMS Ventures that has an interesting ambition of enabling 10 million women with artificial intelligence in Europe by 2023, in a mere 2 years. And I must say, if that piques your interest, have a look at what this unique institution offers. It is no wonder that Gabi Zedlmayer is a member of the prestigious Münchener Kreis, the leading independent platform providing orientation for decision makers in the digital world. And it's a lovely wonder that she joins us today. So Gabi, the floor is now yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Baiba. I think I better get ready for the occasion of the lipstick lunch. Really excited to be here to talk to all of you a little bit about overcoming this catch-22 dilemma and really taking it into a completely new spirit in terms of moving ahead, flexibility, agility, and then take a look back and see if people can catch you. Catch-22, I mean, we all have been, I think, in that situation, or we've observed it many times. A lot of women, if they want to take on board positions, they are asked to show, the C-level experience. But in order to get the C-level experience, you have to make a way through a sometimes very biased environment. And that is still the case today, that there is a lot of preconceived notions and bias in the hiring and in the promotion process. And I was hoping that that would change faster, but and it is changing, but it's still taking time. It's still an environment that that we're all facing. And you know, even today, I mean, I think it's really sad that we still face situations like the SofaGate situation not too long ago, where the head of the commission was not offered a chair in a meeting with Mr. Erdogan. I just think this is so totally unacceptable. And I always love the sentence that Shirley Chisholm said, the first Black US Congresswoman, you know, if they don't offer you a seat at the table, bring your own folding chair. And I think that has to be a little bit of the story. And just one more quote, which I think is really very appropriate here, is Oscar Wilde said, you know, I think that God, in creating man or men, somewhat overestimated his ability. He probably did. But, and here is the good news, I think times are changing. We see that structures are changing. It becomes a lot more flexible. It becomes a lot more agile. And in a way, we're in the midst of the biggest transition that the world has ever seen. I mean, this digitization together with globalization and these exponential technologies come at us very, very, very fast. And it doesn't leave a stone really unturned. And I think what's really important about these times is we're looking at times of unprecedented collaboration. This is the key to being successful in the future, unprecedented collaboration like we've never seen before, with institutions, organizations, folks that didn't used to work together, that now have to come together. And a really good example is what happened with the COVID vaccine. Just imagine, we only found out in December last year, sort of what the issue was, or the year before. It was in 2019 in December. That was when the first alarm bells were ringing. And in January already, you know, some of the researchers had identified the genome of the virus. And it only took months to get into vaccine preparation. And at the end of the year, they were able to roll out, manufacture, and distribute vaccine to billions of people. That is unprecedented. Mankind has never delivered that type of sense of urgency and that type of magnitude in coming together. So I think that is really, really important. But what else do we need, you know, other than the unprecedented collaboration? I think, first of all of you, everybody has to be informed and aware of the context that we're operating in, because the discussion we're having, sometimes it seems to me, we could have had these discussions in the 90s, but we are in 2021. So we have to be aware of all of these transformations and really find out what new roles either have been created, could be created, or could we create ourselves. And I think what's really important is that we understand that the job market is unstable. There is nothing, you know, like it was 30 years ago, you know, that doesn't exist anymore. But to succeed in this really unstable environment, you have to reinvent yourself. And we know that, we've heard that before, but I think that's easier said than done, because at the end of the day, that's a mindset question. It speaks to a lot of self-discipline and really the motivation. But this oftentimes can also be a struggle, because, you know, the most important piece here is that you have to develop resilience. You have to be really self-disciplined. It's really about developing your emotional intelligence, your mental balance, your mental resilience to exist in that type of environment, because we don't have the type of stability that we used to have before. So it's very much something that you need to deal with in your head, and that you should have discussions with, and you should really not push that aside. It's a really, really important point. So when it comes to lifelong learning, I want to say it's not really about lifelong learning. It's about lifelong skills and being relevant, because you can learn as much as you want and still not know anything, or still not really deliver anything. It's really about staying relevant. And I think it is a good investment of your time to see, you know, where are these fantastic learning opportunities that can help you to get there, you know, whether it's a Khan Academy, which I always find extremely useful, because they find such a simple how the world works, how certain, you know, topics really work, and they explain everything. It's really good for students, but it's really good for anybody, I think. or edX or Udemy or Udacity or any of these courses. Just spend the time and look what works for you, and also get together with others and maybe say, look, here's something that is relevant for all of us. Why don't we take a course together? I think that's really important. And what's also important going forward as you build your career is to totally accept that this is a big unknown. Nobody has the answers. You cannot have the answers. But it's a world where a lot of trial and error is necessary in order to succeed. That's not the world that we grew up in, because specifically in Europe, maybe in the US it's different, but specifically in Europe, it's very much a matter of, succeeding. Failure hasn't been built into our mental system, but it will have to be, because a lot of sort of finding this new way forward is, again, it's trial and error, and it's getting, yourself up again. So that's an important piece, as you move forward. Another point that I really want to highlight, that I really think is important for you, is really networking and listening to advice. I think we tend to listen to advice a lot from people that we know very well. And I think that's not a really good investment of your time. If you listen to people that think, act, and behave like you might as well talk to yourself. You don't need that type of advice. You need people that are very different from you. And I also find that a lot of people that were successful, maybe in the 90s or 2000s, or even 10 years ago, tend to go out and spread the word and give advice. And I think oftentimes that is a recipe for disaster today, because certain things have changed. I mean, there are elements, at the beginning of my career where I would say that still holds true, how you deal with people respectfully and to have integrity and so forth. I don't think that will ever change. I hope it's not going to change. But when I started my career, a lot of the best advice was to be better and better at a specialization, get deep into it. That's not very good these days, because a lot of what we really dug into, that's what machines can do better than us today. We need to be much broader and have a perspective. We need to connect. We need to collaborate. We need to reach out. It's a very different system. So I shouldn't go around and tell people how to do things. I can tell them basically, that what worked for me is not going to work today. At least that's what I think. But I think a lot of people don't recognize that. I think a lot of parents that give advice to their kids are not good advisors. These kids live in a very different world, and we as parents should hold ourselves back and not think that we know better, because we don't. We actually don't. So I think when it comes to the networking question, investing the time is so critical. Invest the time in building the network. This is not a nice to have. This is going to be the make or break of your career, is who you know, how you relate to these people, even how relevant you are to them. So when you build the network and you know you want to connect with people, also always think about what can I do for them, not only what can they do for me. It's a give and take. And build time into your calendar and make it a function. When you go to some place and you're invited, figure out who's there, make appointments, prepare, and try to get away with maybe one additional connection. It doesn't have to be 10. One is good every time that you walk away. Another quick piece, and I'm almost done now, is, and that hasn't worked for me, is when people in the beginning, they said to me, you have to be always true to yourself and be authentic. I don't even know what that means. I think, you have to have certain values, and you live these values. Absolutely, there is no doubt about it. But I also think that when I started my career and I would have described myself, I would have been very different from 10 years later to now, to maybe what I am going to be in 10 years. So what is this authenticity? How I am today, or how I was in the past, or how I will be? People are fluid, they move, they develop. And I think we also have to recognize that when we get into the corporate sphere, it's almost like a game. I don't want to say a game because that sounds too playful, but it's definitely an area where people basically play different roles. And this is what you need to know. If you want to reach certain leadership roles, you got to be able to play on all different registers, because today you might have to be a little bit more stringent and forceful in a situation. And tomorrow you want to be more emotional and have more empathy. And the third day, you're going to be more outgoing. And the fifth day, you're just going to be a listener. You have to have these skills. And also, when I've heard that from some of the employees that had really big aspirations, but that said, I'm too shy, I can't stand in front of people. There are things you can learn. You can work on yourself. Just try it out. It's not something that you just read up upon. You got to try it out. Be playful. Try these things, and you will definitely get better at this. So again, I love listening to people, and when they say how things need to be done. And I listened to Amanda Gorman at the inaugural for President Biden, and she said, and so we lift our gazes, not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. And we close the divide because we know we put our future first, and we must put the differences aside. And I think that's so true. Put the differences aside, see how we can solve some of the bigger issues that the world needs to tackle together. And I think that's really what we need to do. And you will be successful if you take a look at your abilities and how you can contribute, create your own roles. And when you get into the sphere where you become successful, I would just say, turn around, send the elevator back down so that more women can get on the elevator, and, look back and make sure they can catch you, if they can, because we need a lot more women in these type of positions. So that's what I would just start out with. And I'm really happy to take any questions you might have.
Gabi, thank you for the inspiration. It certainly resonates with me, especially when you talk about authenticity and networks, and what networks can mean and how you can use networks going forward. Those listening, remember, you can ask questions or make comments on the Q&A function here on Zoom, or comment please on the Facebook page. But I have a question for you. What was your personal catch-22?
I've been thinking, when I came up with a title, I thought, oh, what was it that really held me back? And I think it was more smaller pieces, when I realized, oh my God, how many times do I have to do that? And so, it was never, I really was lucky enough, probably at the time, also the way I was raised, to be in positions and at a time when I was able to really move through the ranks, because I did things a little bit differently from other people. And again, that's a little bit like I was raised. We were 5 girls and 1 boy at home, and I was the 4th girl. So you can imagine, I didn't get anything unless I spoke up and I said, here's what I want and here's what I need, and you better listen to me. And I had a little bit of that attitude. And I have to tell you, that helped me to sort of overcome some of these situations, because again, I'm a little bit more like upfront to address some of these situations. And I think I would advise a lot of the folks listening as well to say, when you see situations where you feel it's a catch-22, no matter what I do, chicken and egg, I'm not going to get to that place. Take it also head on and get some advice from people around you. Like I said, people that come from very different spheres, and try to break it. So it was smaller pieces, but it wasn't that, at one point that there was this magic moment. I think it happens a lot, and you just have to take it on every time.
Then let me ask you a more personal question. I understand that to further your professional development, about 20 years ago, your family decided that your husband would stay home with your 2 children when your youngest was about 1 year old.
Yeah.
Which I think is a not totally uncommon model in Germany, but in this neck of the woods, it certainly would be. However, you've said that it was a sacrifice, as you felt that you missed out on a lot when your children were small.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that women can have it all? We were just reading this.
Yeah.
Christine Lagarde, for example, has said, no, not at the same time, at least.
Yeah,
what do you think?
I would definitely say, some people say it's a matter of how you organize yourself. And I had all the help with my husband. It was 30 years ago, actually. The oldest one is almost done to 30. So anyway, it was not the thing to do in Germany. I tell you what, we were quite strange and different. And I do think you pay a price. You cannot have it totally all, because as you build this type of career, I know, and it's statistically relevant, women have to show, first of all, they get older, they're older than men when they get to the promotion point. So you have to wait this out even longer. You have to have more functional experience. You have more international experience around the globe. You have to bring more to the plate in order to be promoted. And so you can't do that and at the same time, you know, make sure you're home at night and look after the children. And we even had a specific situation where I had to actually move to another office, to another country for some time. And they said it's for a year or two, and it turned out to be for 12 years or 13 years. So no, you can't have it all. You pay a price. But at the end of the day, you know, if I look back, you know, it turned out fine. You know, I have wonderful children, and I'm proud of them. They're proud of me. It all worked out. My husband really helped out a lot. I couldn't have done it without him. But it wasn't easy at times. The children weren't really happy not seeing their mom so much, and I wasn't happy.
Okay, nothing's perfect after all.
Nothing is perfect.
Yeah, you spoke so eloquently about networks. I've just had the great privilege of being appointed or invited to be part of a new women's network called G100. And one of the terms most often used in that environment is sisterhood. What do you think about sisterhood as such? And do you have any good ideas about how women can support each other?
Yeah, so you know, there are so many studies again that I read, and apparently women don't support women enough. If you take a look at the statistics, that seems to be the case. And interesting enough, it's always compared with nature and some group of chimpanzees where it's just the opposite. So where men have never really been able to advance because the women are such a strong network. So maybe we should take a look at that and see how we can learn from the chimpanzees. Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm with Madeleine Albright, who says there is a special place in hell for those that don't help other women. If you don't help other women, you know, there should be a special place in hell. Because if you think about it, we're looking at the history in the last 50 years, but we have to take a look a little bit longer. And even if you go only 100 years back, I mean, women weren't even allowed to vote. And in Germany, even in the 70s, if the husband wasn't okay with the woman taking a job, if he didn't agree, she couldn't do it. I mean, that's the 70s. And in the 50s, you know, you couldn't pay a check if your husband didn't countersign it. So if you think about what has happened, a revolution has happened basically in the last 100 years, and it's not been a bloody one. And yes, I'm not patient enough, and I would like for things to move much faster. But for that, I think we don't need only help of men, we also need the help of women. And I think when we are always told that women are the better communicators and women are so great in reaching out and in communicating, if that's really true, then we should prove that it is true. Because if you take a look at the networks that exist, the male networks are a lot stronger, a lot more effective, and get men into the spheres where it's still difficult for women to land. So for me, it is definitely, you know, men need to change and women need to change as well, and really do a whole lot more to bring women up in the ranks and to be role models and to show to them basically, yeah, you know, you can do this stuff. It's absolutely doable, and really showcase that it's not just, you know, 1 in 10. We could basically have a much better balance, but I think it's both women and men that need to change and be more supportive of advancing women's careers.
Thank you. I could only agree, and be kinder towards each other. I think
Yes.
kindness goes a very long way.
Absolutely. And, you know, when you think about it, when I started, it always seemed that every manager thought that he or she needed to keep information in, you know, and that's today wouldn't even work anymore because everybody has access to information. It's been so democratized, you can get it anywhere. It's not a value anymore. So the value is really what you do with all of that stuff. And so if that's what you can bring to the fore by collaborating, and as I said, this unprecedented collaboration, I think you can make a huge difference.
Gabi, let me turn the corner slightly more into technology. You clearly are a leader in this area, and genuinely the Ms. AI initiative I found very compelling. I understand that you believe that the lack of female representation in the technology domain such as AI is concerning. And the questions would be as follows. Do men develop male-centered solutions? And moreover, I'm in a company that deals with augmented reality and those kinds of things. And the question is, do you believe that will gender have any importance in a future where humankind as a whole will have to deal with unencountered technological phenomena, such as super intelligent machines, engineered bodies, algorithms that can already manipulate human emotion and beliefs, robots, et cetera, et cetera. How do you see that picture from a gender perspective?
So we know that the world of AI, and especially when it comes to compute and when it comes to those people that actually work on the algorithms, is 85% male, white males. And again, nothing against white males at all. It's just that it's not balanced enough. So when they come up with solutions, one example was a soap dispenser that they, that just basically, not even on touch, basically just on motion dispenses soap. But it didn't work on people with dark skin because the guy that just came up with it was white. And it's been always that way in technology, that a lot of the products that came out were done or produced and designed and constructed by men for men. I remember at Compaq, we came up with this first iPad. It was basically a mobile phone. It was basically an iPhone 30 years ago. And the size was made to fit into a male's pocket. I mean, yeah. Cannot imagine any woman putting this device there. So yes, absolutely. I mean, we see it from all of the researchers that there are tons of biases in the algorithms, and then there's tons of bias in the data that goes into the algorithm. So we have to be very aware of that, and we have to have a much more balanced sort of group of people for many reasons that ensures not only that it's gender balanced or, ethically or ethnically okay, but also how we use that technology. I think that's so critical, because if you take a look at the problems the world is facing, we have plenty of problems. We're not going to run out of jobs until we have solved those, but we got to deploy what we have in this unprecedented collaboration across silos to solve these problems. So yes, and when it comes to gender, that's a good question. I read a lot of these reports and they talk about, gender doesn't almost matter anymore, and you're not even sure what people will look like in 50 years. And is it so fluid that you cannot put a descriptor on anybody, or you don't even want to? I don't have the answer. I don't know. I'm reading this, and it's hard with my little brain to imagine what we could potentially look at. But what I would say here is, because in the here and now, and we talk about advice, I think the more we're aware of how much algorithms play with us today already and play with our mind, that the algorithm or the company knows what I want or what I'm going to do next, just because of the pattern that I've left with my machine, with my behavior. That's much more important right now, to think about what it does to you and to still try to sort of take a seat back and understand what's going on, so that you're not totally, or that we're not totally basically dominated by the algorithms around us.
Gabi, you have very well articulated how to be able to run to catch me if you can.
Fantastic.
Ultimately, the final part was about catch 22 around algorithms and how one perceives and defines things. So final question, a very grounded one. Would you be maybe kind enough to share practical advice, though maybe you don't want to give advice, but advice for women who wish to be in charge of their professional development? What would be sort of the top 3 things as
Yeah.
takeaways?
The top 3 things is, first of all, to be aware that this is something that you should be doing and that you want to stay ahead of the game. And that by doing that, you probably will be ahead of the game, and you can look around and say, catch me if you can. That has to be an attitude. So number 1, even know that you need to do that. And then build time in your calendar. It's simple. It's the same thing as with building the network. It's not a nice to have, it's a must have. And find good ways and find a playful way into getting into new topics. If you know nothing about AI, I would start with a TED Talks and watch a couple of AI. They will talk about topics that you can then take a look at. They will talk about people that might be relevant, and find playful ways of getting into these areas. And really, before you get totally lost, really take a look at some of the sites that I've said before, because there, whether it's Coursera or edX or Khan or Udemy or Udacity or the Nano courses, because there, it's very clearly outlined, what you can do, how you can take these courses. Think about it beforehand, play around, talk to people, and then really see to it that maybe you get together with a few other folks and say, don't we want to know the basics of AI? And that's why, for example, I thought Finland was just ahead of the game 3 or 4 years ago when they said, everybody in our country should know a little bit about AI. So let's come out with elements of AI. What a brilliant way. It was a simple 6-module program that anybody can take. And it was not complicated. And afterwards, I'm able to have a conversation where most people think, oh my God, she knows everything about it. This is amazing, because you know a little bit more than other people who know absolutely nothing. So, I don't say become a blender, but always be ahead of everybody. Just like in school, if we had made the effort to just read a couple of pages ahead in the past, we would have been super students. Not that we wanted to be, but it would have been easy to impress the teacher or anybody else. And now I'm just saying, be ahead of what everybody else is doing, and don't wait for people to come to you and say you should do this or that. Just by observation, see what needs to get done and get on with it. And again, mental strength, it's a mental question. It takes a lot of resilience and a lot of discipline, but it's a good investment of your time.
Gabi, thank you for investing yourself in our time for the lipstick lunch for today.
My pleasure.
Thanks. And dear Lipstick Lunch participants, thank you for your engagement in the past 4 months. We intend to return in the fall, so watch this space. You can, however, contribute to the space by letting us know whom you would be interested in meeting at a Lipstick Lunch. Just comment on our Facebook page, and may the summer be sunny, engaging, and a time of rejuvenation. Au revoir to everybody.